Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graben, joined today by another Texan. He is Dr. Kelly Henry. He goes by, I think this is a great description, the customer experience doctor. And so we'll kind of unpack that a little bit and what that means. So he is a chiropractor. He has owned clinics, which I think has given him insight into running and growing a business and the importance of customer experience. So, Kelly, thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity to be on your show, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of common interest and things we'll be able to talk about, and a book that has recently been released. We'll talk about that more. But Kelly, if you want to give mention of the title, please.
Absolutely. It's define and deliver exceptional customer service.
Well, good. We'll hopefully deliver an exceptional podcast here today.
That's my goal.
My goal too. So we've got good alignment there. So Kelly, as we normally talk about here, what's your story? What is your favorite mistake?
Well, it goes back a while, and I've made plenty of mistakes. That's one thing I like to tell my clients now is, you know, learn from my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's easier to learn from somebody else's mistakes than to make them yourself. It saves you frustration, time, and money. So learn from my mistakes. But when I first got out of school, graduated in 1998 here in Dallas from chiropractic school, and decided to move my young family, my wife and our daughter, our only child at the time, to Phoenix, because that's where my wife and I thought we wanted to live. I grew up in Colorado. She grew up in New Mexico area, but we wanted to move to Phoenix. Didn't have any family there, didn't have any friends there, didn't know anything about business, knew how to be a chiropractor from the medical sense, didn't know anything about business, went to Phoenix and thought I could just open my door, put my diploma on the wall, and would be a giant success within just a few months. And
Yeah.
you can imagine what happened there. It was quite a reality check, quite a slap in the face. That it was a lot harder than I anticipated being, and it was a difficult time for us in many respects. But like the premise of your podcast, you learn from your mistakes, you learn from these failures, and you can look back at them and see where it got you later on. And so I'm very
Right.
appreciative of making that decision. I wasn't there very long, had an opportunity to buy a practice in New Mexico where my wife was from later on, and move that direction and move forward with being much more successful. But that was a tough pill to swallow to move to Phoenix and fail like we did.
And gosh, and I mean, this happens a lot. I mean, I've talked to people from different aspects of healthcare, dentists, and others who tend to go and open a practice, doctor of veterinary medicine, and there is that common refrain. Maybe you can elaborate on it of not really being taught how to start a clinic, how to run a clinic, as opposed to it seems like nowadays there are more options to get hired in as an employee somewhere. But what are some of your thoughts or reflections on that education? It taught you how to be a doctor of chiropractic medicine, but why? What are your thoughts on why that business aspect is so often left out of medical education?
Well, the chiropractic school is, and I'm not faulting them because they have requirements that they have to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to give us information so we can pass our board, so we can, even practice chiropractic. And there's a lot of classwork just in that regard. So for them to put anything as far as business in, it's pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And from being a student, we're jam packed with all kinds of classes anyway. So to throw, extra business courses on top of that, we'd be reluctant and probably not appreciate it like we should.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not faulting them. I think the big mistake, like you mentioned, is just having that idea that, I've got the diploma, so that automatically makes me feel like I can start a business and run it. When really you need to get help. And I didn't realize that the group of friends I graduated chiropractic school with, we kind of had that mentality, hey, we'll just, we can do this, no problem. When reality, we should have got coaches, or we should have been hired as associates, and paid our dues, and maybe not made a whole lot of money up front, but learned and get some experience to move forward with. And that's where I personally really missed the boat.
Has that so when you talk about learning from other people's mistakes, it sounds like, or I should ask it instead of assuming, mistake on my part here. Do you give that feedback to new graduates today of kind of sharing your story and helping them think through the options? Do you try to start a practice? Do you get hired in somewhere? Do you join a large, more corporate group, perhaps?
Absolutely. Just, to give them options, and really shed some light on the reality of it, that, and I was the same way. So I can't point fingers at these new graduates, but, most of them come out with, it can't be that hard. It's not that difficult to start a business. It's not that big an issue. And, I always say, well, you just don't know enough to know what you don't know.
Sure.
And only experience and time will show you that, unfortunately. And that's where, if I had somebody like myself as a mentor that stopped me and, at the end of my chiropractic school and career and said, hey, listen, here's what you need to look at and do, I probably had the same resistance to them as well. But I try to bring that forward. Hey, listen, this is what you should be doing, or here's some options that may give you a smoother road to success.
So what was, Kelly, what was the turning point? So you talk about, that experience in Phoenix, that you described as a failure. What turned things around? Was it a matter of having a second chance and learning from initial mistakes? Because growing a group of practices, was not easy. And so what was the difference between that initial attempt and what you managed to grow and build later on?
Well, the one huge positive I took away from being in Phoenix was I was in a clinic that had multiple chiropractors. We each had our own practice. And there was a couple of three chiropractors that had been in practice for many years. And fortunately, they really mentored me and gave me the foundation of things to know and understand, and to move forward to be more successful. So even though we struggled and it was hard for me to get patients, and we made very little money and had to rely on family at times, having that knowledge from those chiropractors helped tremendously. I then had an opportunity from a doctor in New Mexico, where my wife is from, called me up. He knew about me. He didn't know I was struggling in Phoenix, but he said, hey, listen, I'm retired. Would you like to buy my practice out? And fortunately, I was able to do that. And the only reason I was successful in doing that is because of the knowledge and the mentoring that I got from the chiropractors in Phoenix.
Yeah. And was it a difference between starting a practice completely from scratch versus buying one that already had a customer base?
Exactly. And that was huge. That, I walked on a practice where, maybe I was seeing 4 or 5 patients a week in Phoenix, to, I think my first week in New Mexico, I saw 70 patients. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite a change, and a lot of weight off my shoulder as far as having some money coming in.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded. I was going to ask, was the challenge? You answered the question. It sounded like the challenge in Phoenix was gaining new patients, and then there's that question around retaining patients. For ongoing treatment. Why does a patient stay with a provider versus switching? How much that comes down, I'm sure, in a great part not just to the clinical care, but the customer experience, right?
Absolutely. And that I kind of backed into that principle when I moved to New Mexico. The community where we lived is a smaller community, established businesses that had been there for years. And, coming from Dallas, going to school, and then leaving and going to Phoenix, there's a lot of competition in these areas, obviously. And so customer service seemed to be, at least on the radar for most businesses. Well, again, these small business, small town, small community, many of these businesses, that wasn't something that they needed to do. They flipped on the lights and opened the doors, and you had to do business with them.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me long to realize that, and then to really kind of resent that. And I hated how they made me feel. And so I decided very quickly that my office was going to be different. We were going to appreciate our patients and make them feel valued by doing business with me. And it wasn't because, I thought of it as a way to retain business or to grow my business. It was just, we want to have this reputation. And then once we started doing that, I started hearing the patients say, we love coming in here and just, we love how we're being treated. And I noticed that we were keeping more patients and retaining. And some of the patients from the other chiropractors were coming to see me because of my reputation. And that really piqued my interest into studying it more and implementing better practices as far as customer experience. And really is what led me to this 20-year journey and where I'm at now, coaching and consulting it.
Yeah, well, it seems like that, as you've mentioned there, it goes hand in hand. The experience that retains patients then leads to growth. When those patients hear their friend or family member complaining maybe about another clinic and say, well, here, you should come see Dr. Kelly or somebody at one of his clinics. I could see the kind of continuing returns from, as you put it, treating people the right way. What was an example of that, of something that was a differentiator? Whether it was I'm trying to think through from a patient in different settings, what could make a difference? The ease of scheduling an appointment, the way you're greeted, how long you're left waiting in the waiting room. Like, what were some of the key differentiators for you in terms of that experience?
Yeah, all of those were on my radar. The biggest one that I really was very much, I felt a big differentiator. Can't even say that. Anyways, it was that greeting, that initial greeting, that first impression, and make sure it's on point. That soon as that patient walked in the door, our focus was on, hey, we are glad you're here. We are glad you're choosing us to be your provider and letting us take care of you, and making those patients feel immediately welcomed in my business. And that stems from, again, the experience I had with some of the businesses there in the community where, you got ignored, or they could care less you were there, or they felt like you were an inconvenience for going into their business. I didn't want that happening in my clinic. So let's immediately focus on, as soon as that patient walks in the door, hey, glad you're here. We're going to be right with you. Good to see you today, whatever the case may be, but make them feel important.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is the connection between, when I work with health systems, there's often a lot of talk of kind of dual nature around a better employee experience and a better customer experience. What are your thoughts on those connections?
They go hand in hand. And that's one of the first principles that I teach my clients is you have to take care of your employees as well, if not better, than you do your customers. Yeah. It is ridiculous to think that you can treat your employees less than, or value them less, and then expect them to turn around and treat and value your customers better than that. They need to know they're valued. The customer or the employee needs to know they're valued and important and special in that business. And then in turn, they can, as a direct result, value and take care of the customers appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can imagine if the employees aren't being greeted well when they walk in the door, how does that flow through to how patients are being greeted?
Exactly. It's very difficult. They can put on a smile and they can try to, walk through the actions and fake it till they make it, but it makes it more difficult. And to be perfectly honest, calling, pointing some fingers at me, there was a time in my practice where I did not do that very well. I had the mentality that my employees were liabilities and that they were there just to collect a paycheck and that I needed to be on top of everything. And it created a lot of resentment. And my service wasn't as good as it could have been. And one of my coaches called me on it. and said, hey, listen, you're not doing the right thing. You need to look at your employees as assets and start treating them better and start looking at the vast majority of good they're doing instead of focusing on the bad. And as
Yeah.
soon as I made that shift, it was quite a game changer for my practice and really the perception of our service.
Yeah. On your LinkedIn profile, I found this interesting, Kelly. Your summary of what you do. It says, "I help service-based businesses increase revenue 25 to 40% while spending less on marketing." So, from what you've said, I'll ask you to elaborate on it. The connection, it seems, then, is that providing a great customer experience is more effective and less expensive than more advertising, more flyers, more Google ads, things like that, right?
Exactly. Great customer service is the new marketing. And what we find, what we see, what I deal with all the time working with clients and prospective clients and doing presentations is businesses tend to be focused. Well, the premise of a business is to get customers, keep customers, and then make a profit,
Mm-hmm.
very simplistic. Most businesses tend to want to focus on getting customers and then just making profit and not necessarily keeping them.
Hmm.
But when you keep them, that's where exponential growth and profit really come from. And that's the basis of my programs. I call them the 5% bump programs. And that comes from a statistic from Harvard Business School that what they found out is if you'll just increase the customer retention by a measly 5%, it can lead to 25 to 95% increase in profits.
Hmm. Wow.
And that we do that by improving customer service, which creates better relationships, which creates loyalty, keeps those consumers buying or continue to work with your services, whatever the case may be. But that's the goal, is to drive up that retention rate. Yes, you need to advertise and still get new customers in,
Yeah.
but the key is really to keep them in. That's where the growth and profits come from.
Yeah. So, what was your learning curve, Kelly, when you went from running, getting better at running and building and sustaining practices, to then going out there into a new type of practice as the customer experience doctor, being a coach or a consultant, or I don't know what your preferred term is, but what was that learning curve like of learning how to help others in their businesses?
Pretty steep again.
Yeah.
Fortunately, going back to, my mistake was not getting help and jumping, into a business that I knew nothing about. Well, fortunately, I did have some idea what I needed to do, and I immediately got help. So that helped tremendously. But yeah, what a difference from, being with patients and taking care of them and running clinics on that side of things to being in front of a computer and doing things digitally. It's been quite a change. So,
Hmm.
but it's been good, and now I can see both sides of the situation. So that's just adding to my knowledge base is how I look at it.
Yeah. And when you talk about helping service-based businesses, it seems like the first extensions would be from going from chiropractic practices to, say, dental practices or ophthalmology practices, but then there's extension into, I guess, anything where customer service is key. Can you talk about, some of the clients that you work with and how you've kind of taken lessons into other types of service-based businesses?
Absolutely. Physical therapists. I like working with them, love working with them. They have a very similar model to what I had to chiropractors have. That they can be independent. They can also work with other entities, but they really have to kind of fight to build up their clientele and work that way too. So just like working with them because of that very similar attributes to what I dealt with and what I deal with working with chiropractors. Insurance agents, a lot of the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
working with them. The thing though is, really the bottom line is the principles of customer service really apply to any of these businesses.
Yeah.
It's all about getting customers, but yes, keeping those customers and how you make them feel, how you value them on each and every opportunity you can when they're dealing with them. So that's the key components. So, the chiropractors, the physical therapists, the insurance agents, the real estate agents, all of them. Again,
Mhm.
it's just driving that perception that you're there to help them, to serve them, and to make them feel important when you're dealing with them, and that's the key component.
And is there a difference in, I can think of certain service sectors where there's this really ongoing relationship with a client or a customer as opposed to something that's sort of more one-off transactional. I'm think of service industries. Like I got some amazing customer service from a custom bakery in the Dallas area late last year. It was I was about to say big. Important birthday for my mother-in-law. I'm not going to throw numbers around, but because of
Sure.
the pandemic, and we had a trip scheduled to go celebrate her birthday, and we couldn't do that because of the pandemic. So we found a place that could do that, at least offer the promise of a very special cake, and boy, they came through with that. But there's probably limited opportunities for me to be loyal to that bakery, as opposed to chiropractic, where that is more of an ongoing relationship with a patient. Do you tend to work with? Here, I'll give a shout out to that business because this is maybe one. They're called the London Baker. If you're looking for, it's not an advertisement. If you're in the Dallas area, and Kelly or anyone else, if you want a custom cake, the London Baker went above and beyond. It was an amazing cake, an amazing experience. But sorry for that detour. But I'm trying to think of great customer service I've gotten on something that's more of an ongoing relationship, whether it's a dentist or an eye doctor. Do you tend to work with the more relationship-based businesses?
Yes and no. What I teach though is when you're when you're providing great service, whether it's a bakery or a chiropractic office, there's two kind of loyalty that you're building up. So you're building, relationship, and you're building that loyalty where, that customer would die before they go anywhere else. Okay. But if there's a longer relationship, so the baker or a real estate agent's another one that, there's, you're not buying a house every other week. So if
Yeah,
you build that relationship with the real estate agent, the other part of loyalty is to refer others in.
yeah,
And it's not cajoled. You didn't, they're not paying, the baker's not paying you to give them a shout out. It's just because you have a fantastic reason to give them a shout out. And it's not that you're going to go buy anything from them today, but you're happy to say, hey, go see these people. So
yeah.
there's that loyalty of, yes, I'm going to keep buying from you regularly whenever I can, but it's also that loyalty of, hey, others need to go experience what I did. Not only a great bakery, but they're just great people, and they're going to treat you very, very well. So
Yeah, yeah, realtors. Yeah, that seems like a word of mouth referral, and with corporate relocations in and out of the Dallas area, there's one realtor that we've used a couple of times because we had a great experience with him and his team, and we're happy to come back. And I think it's funny you mentioned Phoenix. My wife and I lived in Phoenix, 2001 to 2005, and we had realtors there, Don and Linda Tian, who helped us buy. It was our first home, and they were great. And then we got relocated away from Phoenix and never moved back. One thing they do from an ongoing relationship standpoint, they send out a printed monthly newsletter, and there's some funny stuff in there. And I remember, and they send it every single month. And as we've moved, they managed to find our new address, and it still finds our home almost 20 years later. And at one point, I sent them a note, and I'm like, Don and Linda, you don't have to keep. I enjoy reading it, but we're probably not going to buy a home again in Phoenix. You don't have to keep sending the newsletter. And they said, well, no, you never know. You might know somebody in Phoenix who wants to buy a house. And if I remember right, like they literally do no advertising other than this newsletter that they send to their clients. So I think that's just kind of an interesting case study.
Absolutely. And it's, just keeping top of mind when you provide that great service, and then those little touches, a newsletter, a postcard. That's a lot what I did in my practice. Was we didn't do a newsletter. We sent out postcards regularly.
Hmm.
Just, hey, thinking of you,
Hmm.
you need to get back in here, that type of thing. And when you leave, when you're leaving a patient or customer on a good note, a positive note, and they see that, may trigger them as far as a chiropractic office to go back in, or may trigger them to, hey, I do know somebody that's going to go there, or,
Yep.
even if you don't at the moment, at least it's back in the top of your mind. So that does go a long way.
And good positive connections can stay in someone's mind for decades, even, I guess, as I'm proving.
Absolutely. Decades and decades. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, and our guest is Dr. Kelly Henry. He's the customer experience doctor, and he does work with a lot of different service-based businesses. And let's talk a little bit more about the book, if you can remind us of the title. And as an author, I always want to celebrate other authors because I know this is a big undertaking. So congratulations on getting it published.
Well, thank you. It's my first book, and so I'm very excited. So it's been I've always wanted to write a book, and finally have got it done. So name of the book is Define and Deliver Exceptional Customer Service. And my philosophy in life is just simplicity. That's how I practice, just break things down to the simplest terms. That's how I coach and consult, and that's how this book is. Simple philosophies, simple rules, simple actions that a business can take, implement almost immediately, and improve their customer service almost as quickly if they'll just take hold of it and be consistent with it. That's really the premise. So again, simple ideas, simple philosophy, simple actions that will create major results.
Well, good. So deliver. Nope. Another mistake on my part. See, these are just flubs and slip ups, and all the different universe of mistakes. Not a favorite one, but I do this a lot. Sorry. Define and deliver exceptional customer service. I had it right in front of me, so I
No
didn't get
problem.
it wrong, and I still managed to get it wrong. Define and deliver exceptional customer service. Dr. Kelly Henry, and the audience for this book, similar to your work, service-based businesses, not just chiropractic practices.
Exactly. Service-based, brick and mortar, online digital businesses as well. Principles will apply to them as well. So, and you can find the book at my website, drkellyhenry.com, or really anywhere you want to buy books. So Amazon, Kindle, audiobook, any of those platforms.
Well, good. I hope people will check that out. Maybe a final question. Do you have a favorite mistake from either the writing or the publishing process here?
Um, yes, I should have. I had somebody else read the book for me on the Audible side of things,
Ah,
and I should have went ahead and done it over in my voice. The gentleman who did it did a good job, but after I listened to it, I thought, you know what, I should have done it. When I told people that somebody else did it, I got a lot of, why didn't you do it? So I wish I would have gone forward with that. But my next book, I will definitely do the
yeah.
Audible portion for it. So.
And why was that? Do you think like you have a professional reading it? It probably has some benefits, but did you feel like kind of it just didn't convey the way you would have
Yeah,
wanted it
exactly.
to?
So emphasize certain points. And when I listen to audiobooks, one author in particular, Grant Cardone, if you know who he is, and
Yeah.
I've read several of his books. One in particular, Be Obsessed and Be Average, and he always reads his book, and he always interjects. He'll read through it, but he'll interject at certain
Yeah.
points, and I feel like that's something I could do too. So,
Cool.
but yeah, it didn't come across as quite as enthusiastic as I would have wanted it to. So.
No. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that lesson learned. I know some authors who've done the reading, and I think grueling is the word that I've heard come to mind. It's a lot of
Well,
work, but
yeah, and I think that's maybe the reason I initially didn't. Just I was
yeah.
kind of at that point where it was overwhelming, anyways, and let somebody else take that on for me. But once you get one under your belt, it gets a little easier.
Well, good. Well, so congratulations again, and
Thank you.
it's a good sign when an author is done with the first and is already thinking about the next one. That must mean you enjoyed it.
I did. I'm looking forward to the next one. So.
Well, great. So again, we've been joined by Dr. Kelly Henry. For your website, is it doctor spelled out or Dr. Kelly
Yeah, just
Henry?
yeah, drkellyhenry.com. So,
Okay.
and that's where you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Dr. Kelly Henry. I believe Instagram is dr.kellyhenry, and then Facebook is Dr. Kelly Henry as well. So pretty,
Okay.
you remember that, should be able to locate me somewhere.
Okay, great. And I'll make sure there's a link to the website in the show notes for listeners and viewers to go check that out. So, Kelly, thank you so much for being a guest. Really nice talking to you.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.